4 drivers, welcome to the Channel 19 Experience Trucker Podcast. This is where the real stories roll, straight from the blacktop.
Breaker 19 villains, you got your ears on. You're dialed into the Channel 19 Experience, the podcast that keeps one foot on the clutch and the other on the future of trucking. I'm your host, Tony. It's Sunday, August 3rd, and it's episode number 24. This week, we're going to talk about the math that keeps the wheels turning, because whether you're behind the wheel or behind the business, if you don't know your numbers, as Mark Lemonis says, you don't know your business. In this episode, we're starting off with not one, not two, but three quotes from heavy hitters like W. Edwards Deming, Sundar Pichai, and Lemonis himself, not because we're trying to sound smart, but because the truth is their work got very real again this week with the closure of 3 more trucking companies. And these weren't rookies. These were fleets with decades on the road, and they still didn't make it. We'll walk through what happened, why it matters in the bulletin board. Then we'll ease into the pre-trip segment and start with a dusty old DVD that I spotted at the Iowa 80 truck stop. A forgotten little Stephen King flick called Trucks. Yeah, it's goofy, but it got me thinking about AI, autonomous trucking, and the strange reality we're rolling into. And finally, over on the money line, we're diving deep into something practical and powerful. A simple load-based profit and loss calculator that helps you track your money load by load. It's not about becoming an accountant. It's about making sure your truck doesn't outwork your bank account. Then we're rolling down south for this week's interview with Barry Trahan, Executive Director of the Louisiana Truck Shows. We'll hear how this third-year show came to be and how it's turning into a can't-miss event for truckers from across the Gulf Coast. This week, while making the podcast, I'm listening to Down in the Gully by Brent Cobb. Brent's from Georgia, so then I switched over to some Jerry Reed. Now he isn't from Louisiana either, so I turned on some Amos Moses, and that song is definitely about Louisiana. Well, I wonder where the Louisiana sheriff went to. You can sure get lost in the Louisiana Bayou. Now, Amos Moses, that'll get your head bobbing and ready to jam some gears. And that's all the singing I'm going to do for this week. Don't forget to hang around for the post trip. Let's get this rig rolling before I get wrapped up in some more Jerry Reed love songs. Man, I love his voice. If you're not driving, it's a great time to like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends.
Paper breaker 19, can I get a radio check? Pretty quiet out here on Channel 19. Well, there's a plain white rapper taking pictures at the state line. Hit the jake brake quick, we ain't paying no fines. The driver swing into the interstate, body shop south at exit 5. Building trucking ain't the same as it was. We're the last of our kind.
At the Mid-America Truck Show, I had the fortune to meet up with Mike Barber, founder of Truckers Wealth. Both of us have a passion for understanding the uniqueness of truckers and sharing our knowledge wherever we can. Mike is a seasoned financial professional. He has over 20 years of dedicated experience serving the trucking industry. Truckers Wealth has created a specialized financial hub where truckers can receive expert advice and tailored solutions to build wealth, minimize taxes, and secure lifetime income for themselves and their families. Check out his website, truckers-wealth.com, and look forward to seeing him on the program here soon. Grab that safety vest. It's time for the pre-trip. This week, we're kicking things off with a few quotes instead of just one. Why? Because we're covering a topic that's really important. Whether you're behind the wheel or behind the business, understanding your numbers is how you stay in the game. First up, In God We Trust, All Others Must Bring Data, by W. Edwards Deming. Deming was one of the great minds behind the modern quality control and business management. His message, hope is not a strategy, facts and figures are. Next up, behind every great business decision, there's a great understanding of numbers. That's from Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet, the parent company of Google. And he knows a thing or two about scaling smart. And that starts with knowing what the numbers are really telling you. And finally, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business, by Marcus Lemonis. Lemonis is the host of The Profit, and he's seen countless of small businesses fail, and more often than not, it's because folks focused on passion but ignored profit. And this week, these quotes showed up in a big way. Like I mentioned, 3 more trucking companies shut their doors. Every one of them had history, fleet size, and a reason to think they'd survive. But business doesn't care about your history, it cares about your math. Let's head over to the bulletin board and break it down. As the freight recession drags on and economic indicators stay anemic, no matter what Wall Street's been doing lately, down here on the corner of Main Street and Trucking Boulevard, the headlines hit different. 3 more trucking companies went under, not startups, not side hustles, but outfits with long histories and deep roots. These were fleets with terminals, employees, and decades of sweat equity. First up, Carroll Fulmer Logistics, a family-owned company out of Groveland, Florida, 71 years in the business, 400 trucks, 1,700 trailers. They shut down July 29th. The reason, they stated, a mix of prolonged operating losses and a barrage of personal injury lawsuits. They mentioned 6 to 8 lawsuits at a time, some demanding more than $250,000. The company is offering 60 days severance to around 600 employees as they try to close the doors with integrity. TGS Transportation out of Fresno, California, founded in 1985. They were a regional name in the drayage and intermodal business. On July 31st, they announced they were done. Just like that, 40 years in the game. The phrase they used, challenging market conditions. In plain English, revenue soft, freight inconsistent, margins too skinny. So they thank staff and customers for their loyalty. Some team members might pop up again soon, they said, under a new flag. But as for TGS, the lights are out. And then finally, Indian Creek Express, founded in 1998. They had a trucking company and a brokerage. On July 28th, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They plan to keep operating for now while restructuring. Liabilities listed between 1 and 10 million, assets under 500,000. These weren't backwoods dispatch in a garage setups. These are real companies with real employees, real customers, and real trucks. None of these failures happened overnight. They weren't sudden. They were slow burns, margin erosion, freight disruption, legal hits, and just plain old economic wear and tear. Here's the truth. Trucking is a cash-intensive business. You can look profitable on paper, even show breaking even, and you can still go broke in the real world. Because your fuel invoices, they don't wait. Repairs don't wait. Driver pay, contractor pay, insurance, IFTA, tolls, factoring, payroll, none of it waits. The money often has to go out long before it ever comes in, and you're making that bet, sometimes load after load, that it's all going to pencil out on the back end. Sometimes it does, but sometimes you run out of back end. And when that happens, you're standing there asking yourself the question every owner dreads. Is it worth it to carry on? In good markets, you can hide some bad math, but right now, bad math gets exposed fast and the results are brutal. And that's why our quotes of the week hit hard this time around. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. These companies, either through introspection or hard realities, they failed their own math test. Sometimes you know it, you know the test is coming, and you choose to shut down with dignity. Other times, you get hit with a pop quiz, and the outcome is swift, painful, and unforgiving. Optimism without numbers is just a mirage. Like W. Edwards Deming said, in God we trust, all others must bring data. Hope doesn't pay invoices, and vibes won't fix cash flow. Freight might be moved with torque and fuel, but profit is moved with spreadsheets too. And that's why I built this load-based profit calculator. We're going to talk about it in the money line. Just a few inputs, and it'll tell you straight up, are we making any money on this load? And not just gross pay. Not, I did all right this week kind of math. We'll break it all down in the money line, but let's close this out with a word of encouragement. This stuff's hard. And this is one of the first steps, but it's not the last. And you don't have to figure it out alone. There's folks in the business, good ones, who care about your success. I'll talk about them here. You've met some of them before on the podcast. Mike Ritzema, Mike Barber, Janet Bart at Trans Carolina Permits, Gary Bucks, I've mentioned a little bit in previous episodes, but he comes more into the picture here on this episode. But they're part of this. I include them in the show. I include them in my conversations because they show up before there's ever a buck in it. They're not just out here selling snake oil. They're helping you stay alive. So let's keep learning. Let's keep building. And that's what this week's bulletin board is all about. Before we wrap up the pre-trip, let's take a look at the road we're headed down. So the other week, I was up at the I-80 truck stop for the Jamboree. And like any other respectable trucker who grew up in the VHS era, I took a stroll past the movie rack. Nestled in between the usual suspects was this dusty little gem I'd never heard of before, called Trucks, from 1997, based on a Stephen King story. The cover looked ridiculous, the plot even more so, but I figured why not? So I picked it up on Amazon Prime, and this week I watched it. And you know what? For all its dopey logic and witless characters, it was actually pretty entertaining. Even my wife liked it, which, if you know how she feels about B-list trucking movies, that's saying something. The premise, driverless trucks, big rigs, tankers, and even a few military vehicles suddenly come to life and start wreaking havoc on a small desert town. No explanation, no warning, just pure machine mayhem. And I've got to be honest, there were a few moments where I was kind of rooting for the trucks. Maybe that says more about the people in the movie than me, but still, don't worry, I won't spoil the ending. But the part that stuck with me wasn't the chase scenes or the human or the truck on human violence. It was the communication. The rigs were talking to each other, plotting, coordinating, demanding fuel. And yeah, they were essentially kamikazes. Nobody was going to repair them, but the idea lingered. What happens when the trucks stop needing us? Which brings me to this week's headlines. No, we're not at trucks level chaos, but in some ways the real world is even weirder. Companies like Aurora and Kodiak, they're rolling out driverless test routes in Texas, expanding them into the evening hours, expanding their territory. I saw they opened up a terminal in Phoenix with no human safety driver in the cab. California just passed SB 915 to slow that down, requiring a human being behind the wheel of heavy autonomous vehicles. But you can bet that fight's just beginning. Meanwhile, big money players, OEMs, Silicon Valley startups, logistics giants, they're cozying up behind the scenes, laying digital track for a future where the human element is optional. And here's the kicker. In Trucks, the movie, the rigs turn evil because of some mysterious cosmic force. In real life, it's not some unexplained phenomenon. It's money, pure economics, shareholder pressure, political lobbying, profit margins. Stephen King gave his machines a motive we could fear. Today's autonomous trucks, they're programmed by entities we barely understand and rarely hold accountable. So what's the point of this segment? I'm not here to say robots are taking over tomorrow or to tell you to smash your Qualcomm unit and go full Luddite. But I am saying this, the fight for the future of trucking isn't in the movies anymore. It's in legislation, in boardrooms, in how loud and how often we stand up and speak out. The tech may be smarter than ever, but that doesn't mean the plan behind it is. Trucks may be a fiction, but if we don't keep our eyes open, we might just find ourselves staring in the sequel. I'll post a link to the movie this week and a poll question. Have you seen Trucks? And if not, are you likely to watch it now based on my review? Pre-trip is complete for this week. No defects detected, but that's just my opinion. If you find defects, let us know. Get that seat adjusted? Let's push the buttons in. We've got work to do. Trans Carolina Permits is based out of North Carolina. They've been in business since 1977, and they've got a team with a ton of experience in all of our favorite part of trucking, which of course is the government. They provide a portfolio of services for the trucking industry, not to mention they have a compliance program. They'll help you with clearinghouse setup and queries, IFTA, and mileage reporting, so your state-by-state mileage, your fuel purchase tracking, and get that wrapped up into a nice little bundle for quarterly filings. They're a one-stop shop for your trucking needs. You can find them on Facebook and LinkedIn, or check out their website, transcarolinapermits.com, or give them a call at 1-800-899-4870.
It's by truckers for truckers. This is the Channel 19 Experience. Let's hit the road.
Welcome back. Let's put that turn signal on, hop out in the hammer lane, and knock out the money line this week. This week, I came across two great online conversations that cut right to the heart of the business side of trucking, knowing your numbers. And listen, it doesn't matter if you own the truck or you don't. If you're in the seat, this matters to you. Of course, if you're the owner, it's your livelihood. But even as a driver, understanding how this business works can help you make smarter decisions. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one holding the title to the truck. First up, a Reddit thread where drivers shared what tools they use to figure out cost per mile. They talked about do-it-yourself spreadsheets and OOIDA calculators to more advanced platforms, inside load boards or other tools. A lot of drivers are getting serious about understanding their cost structure. There was a lot of commentary, it was great discussion, and the thread was full of real-world tips. But the real gem this week was over on Facebook, in a group called Truck Business Network, run by Gary Bucks. If you don't know Gary, let me tell you, he's the real deal. Gary's retired from trucking now, but he spent years building and running businesses in trucking and beyond. These days, he spends his time advising others and paying it forward. He genuinely cares about helping truckers not just survive, but thrive as business owners. The Truck Business Network Group is a space for anyone in the industry looking to share advice, ask smart questions, or level up their business game. Whether you're brand new to trucking or have a few million miles under your belt, it's worth checking out. This week, Gary asked a simple question in the group. He said, people enter trucking ownership for the first time every week, even in this current market. What's one piece of advice you'd give? And what followed was a gold mine of wisdom. Guys like Jason Cowan, Clifford Peterson, and Bradford Tolhurst all chimed in with real-world advice about trucking, about tracking their costs per day, per mile, even per hour. And one comment that stuck with me, Jason Cowan said it best, buckle up, Buttercup. And he talked about bringing in data analysts with no real trucking experience who helped his team completely transform how they look at cost per mile in decision-making. Now they've got real-time planning dashboards based on cost per mile, which is a game changer, he said. Clifford Peterson emphasized tracking every load's costs and factoring in time. He said if you don't know your numbers, you won't be in business long. Amen, Clifford. Bradford Tolhurst, he brought up a wild card, fuel. Not just the price per gallon, but how fuel cost spikes when you're running heavy, running long, chasing cheap freight to get into a good market. Gary himself added a great point about separating fuel surcharge from revenue so you can understand your true fuel costs. If your fuel surcharge is more than what you paid at the pump, that's a win, he said, but you've got to be tracking it to know that. Inspired by those conversations, I put together a Google sheet that estimates profit and loss per load. Whether you're an owner-operator or running a small fleet totally on your own, not giving up a cut to anyone, or if you're giving up a percentage to a carrier, a factoring company, a broker, whether you're pulling your own wagon or somebody else's, or just curious what you're really making, it's a basic profit and loss calculator on a load-by-load basis. Right now it's basic, but that's kind of the point. Once you dial in your fixed costs, truck payment, insurance, plates, etc., you can reuse them. You don't need to redo the math every time. Need help figuring those out? OOIDA's got a great cost calculator. That's a good place to start. Or you can just use industry averages. Just tweak them to fit your setup. I'll share the link to the OOIDA calculator in the podcast episode and on our socials. But here's how the Google sheet that I created works. Up on top, you're going to enter some basics. What your line haul amount was, fuel surcharge, any accessorial charges that you're making money on the load, whether that's layover, tarp fee, stop pay, etc. It doesn't really matter where you put the revenue dollars in those boxes. As far as the calculations are concerned, revenue is revenue, but it helps you see the breakdown. And even if you're getting paid one flat rate, it helps if you break down all the costs so you understand your real revenue streams and what is and isn't working when you step back and take a look at the bigger picture. There's a box for your cut, basically the percentage of the revenue you keep. If you get it all and aren't giving up a cut to somebody, then just put 100%. Otherwise, add up the cut that you have to give to somebody else. I can make separate boxes later on if you guys want to see that. But for now, it's just one field. Go ahead and subtract that from 100% and enter your cut percentage. All the calculations will be based off what your cut of the revenue is in cell C18. Over on the right, you're going to see an expense summary that you don't need to do anything with in those dark red boxes. Those will all be calculated from what you enter down below. I'll keep scrolling down and you'll take a look and you'll get into more fields about your load and your expenses. There's a couple of mileage boxes where you enter in your deadhead miles and your loaded miles. You'll enter in your MPG for the trip and your expected fuel cost per gallon. I just used one number here for now, so it's up to you to estimate. You should know what you're averaging loaded and empty on your MPG and be able to quickly put in a blended average and then do an offset if the load is light or heavy, or if you're running mountains or across Nebraska. And I'm not talking about just your MPG running down the road here. This is your total MPG, including your idle time. Also be sure to consider things like wind direction. This is one of your biggest variables in MPG. Running with some tailwind on this trip, bump your MPG up a couple tenths. Against the wind, knock it down a few extra tenths from your usual average. Headwind hurts more than tailwind helps you when it comes to MPG. Also think about how you plan to run it. You've got a deadline to meet and you plan on running 75 miles an hour, then drop your expected MPG. Got all the time in the world and plan to run it nice and easy at 65 miles an hour in the right-hand lane, listening to a great podcast like this one, then you can go ahead and raise that a couple tenths. Now for fuel costs, think about where you plan to buy fuel on this load and what the cost is going to be. I kept this part simple for now in the calculator. We aren't calculating expected fuel tax liabilities and all of that right now, like Jason Cowan talked about. All that stuff matters, don't get me wrong, but let's get the basics down first. Now, hopefully you're buying fuel with a discounted fuel card. If you're paying marquee price, you need to talk to somebody. I know some cards and can help if you need, talk to other people, but good God, no matter what you do, get on a discount somewhere. They aren't a scam. Sure, they have some fees, but you can save a hell of a lot of money. And then you'll be using their website or app to find out where to buy fuel and be getting more accurate fuel prices. So think about where you might buy fuel. Go see what the price is that you're going to pay on this load. I'll put a couple links for other places to check diesel prices if you want to, like AAA. They'll give you prices, but those are marquee prices. Get a discount fuel card. Now keep scrolling down. You're going to start seeing some fields for expenses. Estimate your tolls, scale tickets, pilot cars, permits, anything else. You can throw those in there. It doesn't really matter which box you put them in. It all goes into the total from an expense standpoint. So just get the cost in there is the key thing. Then down below that, I've got some calculators for driver pay if you want to pay yourself or you're paying a driver for the load. You can calculate that. If you aren't worried about what you pay yourself right now or aren't paying a driver, just put all zeros in those boxes. You can calculate for both wages and benefits. You can do flat pay, percentage or mileage based, or a combination of them. For example, if you want to pay per mile, but also pay $50 flat fee for stops or tarping, you can do that. You can put numbers in both boxes. Then you can add in your percentage for Social Security matching and benefits if you're paying that to your driver. If you're doing 1099 with your driver, first go listen to our episode or interview with Mike Ritzema from Superior Trucking Payroll Service about paying drivers as 1099s when you're not supposed to be. But if you are paying 1099, you can just put zeros in the driver benefits boxes. I haven't done the per diem option yet, but I will. I'll probably do that with Mike Ritzema. He can help make sure I get the math right, but it's relatively straightforward once you get the formulas in there. And if you look over to the right, you're going to see some options to put in your fixed expense costs. Things like your truck cost, your maintenance cost, your tire cost, your license cost, your insurance cost. I have them filled in with the industry averages coming from ATRI, the American Trucking Research Institute, but you can adjust those. And also, if there's something that, let's say, is you're not paying for on your own because it's coming out of your percentage, let's say the trailer line, there can be a wide variance in what your trailer cost could be. You could be running a paid off trailer and have zero cost. You could be pulling the company that you lease to's trailer, or you could have a cheaper trailer or a much more expensive trailer. You can adjust your costs in there. Also, this is where that OOIDA calculator comes in handy. You go over there, and that's got a really fancy way of calculating some of your costs. I mean, what you're really trying to do here is basically understand what some of these bigger costs are that you don't pay on a per mileage basis. You pay monthly or you pay annually, like in the case of license plates or insurance, and spread that out over how many miles that you run. And then you understand what's that costing you on a per mile basis. That's why it's called a fixed cost, because you have to pay it whether you run the truck 50 miles or 15,000 miles that month. The variable costs, of course, are dependent on how much you move, right? You got to buy more fuel for 15,000 miles than you do for 1,500. So that's why it fluctuates more. And don't worry, right? If you're not going to break it, well, you might break it, but it's easy to fix. It's easy to get a new copy. If something goes haywire, just reach out. And there's always the magic undo button on your keyboard. That would be Control Z at the same time if something goes sideways, and that just undo. You can just keep pressing undo, undo until it gets back to normal. And that's it. Back up on top, it's going to give you a summary of the revenue and expenses and also your various profits or losses on the load. Gross profit or loss in dollars, gross profit or loss on all miles, gross profit or loss per mile on just loaded miles. And like I said, once you get the static data in there on your fixed costs, they don't change very much. This is a pretty fast and realistic approximation of profit and loss on a load. Want a copy? Just shoot me an email at inbox@channel19experience.com or throw your email address up on social media. Probably wouldn't recommend that much, but you do you. And I'll send you out a copy. I'll make a copy of the spreadsheet and I'm going to share it out your way. That way it's your copy. Nobody else is in there but you, and you can make adaptations as you want. And listen, if you're scared of Google Sheets or you're not familiar with spreadsheets, reach out anyways. Me or someone else will find the time to help you learn. It's a really valuable tool and it can make your life easier. And I've been there. Back in 1996 or so, I got my hands on a spreadsheet for the first time and I was lost too. I was printing off pages and taping them all together on the floor because I couldn't wrap my head around what I was looking at on the screen. So I get it. It could take a bit to wrap your head around it. I'm also going to make a YouTube version of this segment and it'll have video and I'll talk through it with some visuals. So I'll put a link out there on the Facebook page so you can see that as well. And let me know what you think. I've already got some ideas for improvements. I spent a few intimate hours with AI the last couple days. Me and ChatGPT got real friendly. And I've already got a copy of it calculating fuel tax liabilities. I've got it hooked up to a bunch of Google Maps APIs. My IT team at my day job is going to be worried. um, you know, I can't code to save my life, but you give me AI, and next thing you know, I got integrations wired up and buttons wired up on the front end. So I'm ready for website time now. Let's get this thing out on our website. I'm not that bright, but me plus AI turned out pretty good. And I know it's not truck routing, right? These are Google Maps APIs, not truck routing. It's not coming from PC Miler or something like that. But it's an estimate, and it's a low-cost start to solving some of the things Jason Cowan talked about with his analyst and real-time guidance on what price points you should be targeting before booking a load. So, we'll see. Maybe we can get there with this tool as well, which is basically just put where you are and some general states or directions you want to head, and it should tell you what you should be targeting. We'll keep playing around with it. I'll get some even smarter folks on to look at it and talk about it. And if you don't like my methods, let me know. Or if you got better ideas, I'm happy to hear them. You won't hurt my feelings. I already know how to calculate the profit and loss on a podcast. There's no real revenue yet, so it's all loss, except for your and my entertainment value. That's it for the money line this week. We're shifting gears. Next up, we've got our interview this week with Barry Trahan, Executive Director of Louisiana Truck Shows. We'll talk about Barry's journey through trucking, the birth of his truck show, and what's in store for the third edition coming this October 24th and 25th down in Rain, Louisiana. So let's drop it down to line 4 for a quick break and then talk to Barry. After that, we'll catch you on the flip side with the post trip. True TMS is a cloud-based transportation management system. Being in the cloud makes integrations faster and you're able to access the platform from anywhere. It has intuitive planning, on-demand reporting, and easy order creation, rating, and invoices, which turns tedious admin work into streamlined automated workflows. The folks at True TMS have decades of trucking and liquid experience, and they care about this industry. They don't just sell you a product, they're invested in your success. Visit their website, truetms.com, and of course, tell them Channel 19 sent you.
More than anything, this show's about bringing back the sense of community we used to find on the CB, especially good old Channel 19. No rants, no corporate spin, just long-form storytelling from someone who's been behind the wheel, built the fleet, hit rock bottom, and climbed right back up.
All right, well, tonight we've got a guest from down south. I've been talking to a lot of Minnesotans lately, so it's nice to have a different accent on the phone than my own. Barry Trahan joins us, Executive Director of the Louisiana Truck Shows. Welcome to the show, Barry.
Thank you for having me, Tony. Much appreciated.
So, before we start talking about the truck show you've got coming up here in October, let's walk it back a couple pages in the logbook and talk about your how you got into trucking in the first place and how your career started.
Sure. I graduated high school in 1988. And when I graduated high school, I went to college for 3 semesters for political science. And after the 3rd semester, I was bored to death. And I'm like, you know what? This ain't for me. So I hung around Louisiana till I was 21. And on my 21st birthday, I took a Greyhound bus to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah.
And when I got to Las Vegas, I signed up for casino dealing school to be a casino dealer. And I stayed there. I graduated school. I stayed there for 3 years. I had a blast. It was a great time working in the different casinos that I worked in. I got a ton of stories, but we're going to save that for another day. But I stayed there for 3 years. When I was 24, 25, probably 24, I came back and I didn't have a job, and I went to work as a yard hand for a company called G&H Seed Company. South Louisiana, our main crop product around here is rice. Where I live at in Crowley, Louisiana, Crowley is known as the rice capital of the world. We produce the most rice and process the most rice in the world. And I went to work for a company that supplied the fertilizer and seed for that industry. And I didn't have a car. I was a young man. I was a young heathen, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I went to work for G&H Seed, and I literally, it's going to sound like a story, but I didn't have a car, but I knew I wanted to do something with myself. I wasn't quite sure what. And I walked to work every day about 5.5 miles. I'd walk there and I'd beg somebody from the facility to give me a ride back, which most of the time it worked out. But a friend of mine, Darren Barronay, Darren worked for G&H Seed. His father worked for G&H Seed for years as truck drivers. And one day I was walking to work, and Darren, he was in an old cab over for G&H. He pulled over, picked me up, and brought me to work. And he said, Barry, you need to go to work for a farmer and learn how to drive a truck. and you'll have a way to work at least. So I went to work for a farmer shortly thereafter, Glenn Ray Trahan from Kaplan, Louisiana. He was one of the biggest rice farmers in our area. And I went to work for him, and he asked me if I could drive a truck. And I said, well, I know how to wash a truck, but as far as driving, I have no idea. And I went to work for Glenn Ray, and Glenn Ray had me driving the truck on the farm. It was old 1978 Peterbilt day cab, 13 speed. And I tore that old truck up trying to learn how to shift. But 2 years later, I got my CDL, and I just started doing different kind of trucking. I pulled tankers, grain hoppers. I did oversize on the farm, moved combines around. So I did that for a while, and I got tired of truck driving in Louisiana, and I decided I wanted to go to flight school. So I had a house, my first house I purchased. I purchased that house for $15,000. My mortgage payment was $110 a month. I paid off that house in about 5 years. But after I decided to go to flight school, I sold the house, and I took that money from the sale of the house, and I enrolled in flight school in Daytona Beach, Florida. And I come to find out flight school was very expensive. And I think I had like $12,000 for flight school, and I went through that in about 3 months, taking flight
Wow.
lessons. So when I got down to my last thousand, I went over to the Freightliner dealership in Orlando, Florida, and I didn't think I was going to get approved, but I bought my first truck. It was an old Swift truck. It was governed at 55 miles an hour. I took a test drive, and I told the salesman was with me. I told him, I said, man, I said, I'll buy the truck if y'all can turn it up to 85. But I said, it's 55 mile an hour for the birds, you know? So lo and behold, I got approved for that truck, and I started running from Daytona Beach, Florida over. I was running a flatbed for a friend of mine. They owned a tree farm, and I was running trees from dragonwood trees from Astor, Florida, which is outside of Daytona Beach, and I was running to San Diego, California, to the port with these trees, and the trees would go overseas to China. And what China would do with it, they would make silkwood trees, artificial trees.
Hmm.
And from San Diego, I would catch a load, and I'd run up to Stamford, Connecticut. Not Stamford, Connecticut, Bangor, Maine. And from
Mhm.
Bangor, Maine, when I got empty, I would deadhead to Stamford, Connecticut, and I would haul computers back down to Daytona Beach, Florida.
Okay.
And I started, I was making a ton of money. I was loving it. Diesel, enjoy. The majority of the times, after coming off my days off, I would deadhead to Georgia just to buy diesel right across the state line, because diesel back then in Georgia was like 89 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
And versus Florida, I think Florida back then was like $1.35, $1.40. So, when I was ready to go back to work, I would just deadhead to Georgia, get my diesel there, and pick up a load around the state line there. But I did that for several years, and on one of the trips that I made to Bangor, Maine, I met a girl, and she was from around Springfield, Massachusetts, and we ended up dating, and I ended up moving there for 10 years. Thank God, me and that girl, they owned a construction company, and they did a lot of work out of Boston area, all of New England, New York City. And I worked for them for 10 years. And me and this young lady, excuse me, we fought at work, we fought at home, we fought every day. And I did that for 10 years. And finally I said, you know what? I said, I'm not gonna marry her, so I'm gonna leave her. Because I just got tired of fighting. And I ended up coming back home, and I've been back home in Louisiana for about 15 years now. And
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. And then when did you start getting into heavy haul and stuff like that?
Oh, I got into heavy haul. I did a little bit of heavy haul from day one back
Mm.
in 1994, when I was working for Glenn Ray on the farm.
Yeah.
We had to move combines from one field to another field. I would move his combines for him. And just throughout the years, wherever I worked at, anytime they needed a piece of equipment move, I was the first to volunteer because I wanted to get into heavy haul. I was amazed at how these guys could move big, huge equipment like that, and I wanted to get into that. And I want to say I've been sick for 2 years, so I haven't worked for 2 years. But before that, I did strictly heavy haul for 7 years.
Yeah, what kind of things were you hauling?
I did anything and everything. Every time I would go to a truck stop, the young truck drivers, I had a load on, 12 wide, 13 wide, whatever it was. And these young truck drivers would come up to me and say, "Man, can you give me some advice on how to get into heavy haul? Give me a little bit of some recommendations." I said, "Yeah." I said the biggest thing is to get started in heavy haul, you want to get started with flatbed. From flatbed, you go to step deck. From step deck, get hooked up with a company that does RGN work. And I said the biggest thing when you start your flatbed career, the biggest thing is to never take the word no out your vocabulary. Never say no, because when you say no, that you're going to become that no god, the guy that's afraid to do, the big stuff, to do the tough stuff, the New York City runs. I would tell these guys, if a New York City run comes up, take it, grab that thing, because you're going to be known as that driver that can get it done. And I would tell these guys like Chicago, Boston, the difficult places, Chicago, Boston, LA, Portland, Seattle, New York City, Newark, New Jersey, the places that the truck drivers don't want to go, the young truck drivers. I told him, I said, once you go do it the first time, you got the hard part over.
Yeah.
Not the rest of it's easy. And that's how I pretty much geared my career. I never said no. I can't remember one time where I said no. I was always, if a broker called me up and said, "Hey, I got a load that, has to get to New York City, it picks up wherever it picked up," I would never say no. Now we'd have some negotiations on the rates because the rates have been in the tank the past 5, 6, 7 years. But
Yeah.
that was the biggest advice I would tell these young drivers is don't say no. Where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to succeed in the trucking industry, you know, uh, take them difficult loads, take them difficult cities. And before you do anything, make sure your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted. Make sure you have uh, not only a safe way in, like if you're going into New York City, I would tell these guys, don't find one way into the destination. Find multiple ways, because in a big city like that, there's road construction that pops up out of nowhere. They got
Yeah.
streets that are closed, roads that are closed. Always have a secondary route. And I told him, I said, your biggest, I told him, I would tell him, throw your GPS out the window. It don't matter if you got a car GPS, a trucker GPS, throw that thing out the window because it will get you in trouble, especially in Baltimore, Maryland, going to the port of Baltimore. That's a whole nother story. But uh, I would tell them the best tool that they have in their arsenal as far as trucking is the Google Maps with the Google Street View.
Yeah.
I would tell them every time you see an overpass around New York City, New Jersey, drop it down to Google Street View and look at what that clearance is. Um, if you have a questionable turn that you got to make, drop it down on Google Street View and see if you can make that turn. If you can't make that turn, don't get yourself in a situation, because if you have a question about a turn or a clearance, you will get in a severe problem. It
Yeah.
happens to all of us.
Yeah, and don't be afraid. I know it sucks and it's a pain and you feel like an idiot if you got to back out of something, but the alternatives are often a heck of a lot worse.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'd rather get my butt chewed by a state trooper than go and total a $1 million excavator on the back of your RGN because you
Right.
thought that you might be able to make it.
For sure. For sure. So then tell me about the truck show. Like how you've been a part of it since the beginning?
Yep, I'm the founder. I was the brains behind it, and the way it started. When
Yeah.
I first started truck driving over the road, you know, I worked on the farm for Glen Ray for G&H Seed. And after I did that, I went to Daytona Beach and I started, you know, I bought a truck and I ran. And I started the first time I went to Walcott, I had never heard about truck shows. I didn't even know a truck show existed. I was a new driver. And the first time I went to the Iowa 80 truck stop in Walcott, Iowa, I was amazed. I was like, wow, look at this. I went to the museum that's right next door. And I just started asking questions, and they were telling me, the employees told me that they had a truckers jamboree every year. And I want to say it was like 1997 when I found out about that. And I told myself, I am going to that truckers jamboree next year. Where the following year would pop up and I couldn't make it because of a load or something. Something always happened. And years go by, a decade goes by, and I still never made it to the Walcott Truckers Jamboree. And I heard about Mats as the years went by. I tried to make it to Mats for several years, and all these big truck shows that I wanted to go and be a part of to experience, I just never made it. And I told some heavy haul. I had picked up a load in south southeast Oregon. It was a short run, a heavy haul load, and it was going over to the port in Seattle, Washington. And a friend of mine, he was running with me, and they got one big truck stop in Seattle. It's actually in Vancouver, and we had planned up on meeting at that truck stop and to spend a weekend there. And I told him we were talking about Walcott Truck Show, the Match Truck Show, and my friend's name was Hippie. I don't want to say his last. Hippie's a private truck driver. When I talk about Hippie, I just say Hippie. But Hippie's from the Longview, Texas area, and Hippie told me, he said, "Barry," he said, "they don't have no truck shows in Louisiana." I said, "Yeah, they got, you know, a couple of small ones, you know, nothing fancy, but I said, yeah, I want to make it to Walcott." Or he said, "Man," he said, he goes, "Barry, when you go to work for 3 or 4 months. You're never home." He said, "What you ought to do is just make your own truck show. Do a truck show in Louisiana." And I said, "Fool," I said, "you go do a truck show." I said, "Do you have any idea what it takes to do a truck show?" And he said, "Barry," he said, "I'm telling you," he said, "around Lafayette, Louisiana, where you're from," he said, "that would go over big." And I went, "Yeah, it probably would." But I said, "Do you know the vast amount of resources, financial resources, uh, the people resources that you need to pull something like that off?" I said, "Hippie, I'm a broke truck driver." I said, I ain't got no money to put on a truck show." And he kept pushing me the whole weekend. He would push me. "Barry, do a truck show. I'm telling you, you could do it." And I'm like, "Yeah, Hippie." I said, "You're on drugs, man." Well, that night, that Saturday night, I went. This is what made my mind up. It was I call it a fluke, but I think it was the good Lord touching my heart. Uh, I went into sleep that night, and I'm looking at Facebook like I do every night, you know, looking at what everybody's up to. And an organization called the Way Training Center came across my news feed, and I had no idea what the Way Training Center was, and it kept popping up. You know, I was up to about 2, 3 in the morning on Facebook, and I'd exit out. I wasn't following it, but this Way Training Center kept popping up in my news feed.
Mhm.
So I was like, click on the link and see what it is. So when I clicked on it, I seen one of my childhood friends, Jared Morgan. That was his organization. Jared Morgan was a truck driver as long as I've been a truck driver. And Jared, coming up through the years, he struggled with life controlling issues, drugs and alcohol. And he quit truck driving. He went to several rehabilitation organizations to get better, you know, to be able to be a successful member of society, and it worked for him. And it was a Christian-based organization, and as the months go by, it was put on his heart. He started going to church every Sunday. He got active in the church, And he decided with some other friends of his that also struggled with life controlling addictions that were now doing much better in life.
Hmm.
They decided to start an organization called the Way Training Center for Men. And they didn't know how to get it started. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how they were going to fund it, but they knew that if they did it, the need was there because South Louisiana, our area, is inundated with people that are struggling with life controlling addictions. Long story short about that, that organization, they have a campus, they have a school, they have a church, and they house anywhere between 80 to 100 men 7 days
Wow.
a week, year round. And it's an intensive 16-month program. It's church based through the church. They're pretty much under lock and key, and it's for a good reason. Um, the first, I want to say 9 months is at the training facility, taking courses on how to overcome the addictions through Christ. And after the ninth month, after they finish that portion of the program, they ask them, do you want to go to trade school or do you want to go to college? And most of them go to trade school for truck driving. They want to be
Hmm.
truck drivers. And as I'm in the sleeper at this truck stop and I'm going through this, I'm like, it gave me goosebumps. I'm like, well, I said, if we're going to do a truck show, this would be the perfect reason to have a truck show to help this organization with funding to where they can continue to do what they're doing
Yeah.
financially. And I had it talked to, well, I'm jumping off track a little bit, but after they have a 93% success rate of the guys once they go to trade school, of graduating trade school. And once they graduate, the school assists them in finding employment in truck driving. A lot of the time it's hard because the guys are coming out of truck driving school through the local SLCC, Southwest Louisiana Community College. They're coming out and they have felonies on their record. And if you have
Right.
a felony on your record, it's tough to get a job as a truck driver. So
Yeah.
that the only option that leaves you is to find a local company willing to give you a chance. The problem with that is the local companies won't hire you until you have a year or two experience.
Right.
So it's tough for a lot of these guys. And I'm going to get back to that shortly. But um, when these guys go to work, they get a job, they start truck driving, they're still living at the facility. They don't get kicked out to the curb. They continue to live at this facility. And as they're living there, they're saving their money, and the facility assists them with getting their own transportation and their own housing, rent house, apartment, whatever the case may be. And it works out great. They have a great business model, 93% success rate. Well, that night after I did all my research at 3 in the morning, I said, when I get home, I'm gonna reach out to my old friend Jared Morgan.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I woke up the following morning. It was a Saturday morning, and I sent Jared a message on Facebook, and I told him I had something to talk with him about, and I asked him if he would be interested in coming over to my house, visit with me in the shop. And he was over that Saturday morning, and I pitched my idea to him, and he loved it. We did the first truck show, the planning stages for the truck show, and the finances. We figured out it would cost $11,000 to put on that first truck show for a 1 day event. We wanted, T-shirts, trophies, awards, facility rentals, insurance, all the stuff that you need to put on a legitimate truck show. And long story short, at the end of the first year, we we grossed at the truck show $27,000 on our first year, and we were hoping for 50 trucks to come. I was scared to death that we were only going to have 15 or 20 trucks,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I was working so hard to get that 50. I didn't have a website. All I had was a Facebook page, and by 3 months before the date of the truck show, we had 100 trucks registered. 1 month before the truck show, we had 235 trucks registered. And
You
I
should have
get
been in sales,
emotional.
Barry.
Look, I get emotional every time I tell that story because I was so stressed out, and it was such a relief to have garnered that much support in that little bit of time.
Yeah,
And at the end of the truck show, we were able to give the Way Training Center $17,000.
that's amazing.
Um, I went at our truck show in that first year. That was we're in 2025. That was 2020. 2023 was the first one, November the 1st. And I want to say it was in January. I went in for a doctor's appointment because I was sick. I just felt run down. I was 53 years old at the time. I thought it was an old age. And I went seeing my doctor, and my doctor did blood work. And she called me the next day, and she said, Barry, what are you doing and where are you at? I said, what are you talking about, doctor? And she goes, you're in stage 5 kidney failure. And I said, stage what? I said, what are you talking about? And she goes, where you at? I said, I'm at my house in my kitchen. And she said, don't drive to the hospital, find somebody to drive you. And I
Mm.
said, no, I'm picking up a load in Galveston, Texas in the morning. I'm picking up an excavator going to the Northwest. And she said, Barry, she said, you're not going anywhere. She said, you're going to the hospital. And I'm like, she got mad. And when she got mad and her voice, her tone changed, I'm like, she's serious.
Hmm.
So I hung up with her. She said, call me when you get to the hospital. I hung up with her. I went to the hospital. The doctor, I get checked in. The doctor comes in and said, Barry, you're going to be here for a while. We're going to have surgery, and you're going to have surgery in the morning to try to put stents in your kidneys. And we're basically trying to keep you alive. And I went, what are you talking about? Because I was just tired. I didn't feel sick. And he explained everything that was going on. They did x-rays, and I don't want to get too much into what the problem is because it's long and drawn out, but um, they did surgery the next day, and the surgery was a failure. They couldn't get the stents in the kidneys, and they put me in the ambulance and transferred me to a hospital in New Orleans. And when I got there, 3 doctors came in, and they said, Barry, we're basically going to try to keep you alive. And they were like, you're sick, and you're going to
Mm.
be here for a while. And I said, well, what's a while? you know, I'm like, I got to go to work, man. And the doctor said, you're not going to work for a while. He said, you're in stage 5 kidney failure. You need dialysis and you need a kidney transplant. And I told him, I said, you're wrong. I said, I fought him the whole time I was there. And I told him, I said, I'm going to get better. And, I'm not sick. And I knew I was sick, but I didn't want to accept it. And unfortunately, the truck show was coming up for the second annual truck show, and I'm laid up in the hospital. And I basically, uh, I told myself, I said, well, since I'm laid up here in this hospital, I'm going to go ahead and we need a website. So I'm going to go ahead and build a website. And I said, well, I don't know how to build a website. So I went to YouTube and I YouTubed how to build a website. And I found this long video that showed how to build websites on GoDaddy.
Yeah.
And so I created a GoDaddy account and I went back and forth to build our truck show website. And within, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, I had a fully functional website ready to be published. And I opened up the truck show Facebook page. I announced that the website was ready to start taking registrations. And before I got out the hospital, we raised $7,000 in vendor registration and truck registrations. We had over 100 trucks registered before I got out the hospital. And I was there for 3 weeks. And when I came home, I had tubes coming out my kidneys. I had tubes coming out places I don't want to talk about. I was a mess. And I got home and the doctor was like, don't, just stay on the sofa, stay in the bed, because they call it, I'm going to say this wrong, but I had nephrostomy, I can't say it too. And I was on that sofa for 3 months and I was having a pity party for severe depression for 3 months. And I was talking to my employer, PCM Logistics, who I was, a heavy haul driver for. And they said, Barry, they said, don't worry about your job. Your job's going to be here. We're not letting you go. We're going to continue to pay your insurance. They're still paying my insurance 2 years later. I can't speak enough good things about PCM Logistics. They've been so supportive. Um, so we get to the truck show, the second annual truck show, which was November. I think it was last year was November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And it was a 3-day event. And I learned that a 3-day truck show was too long.
Mm.
It was a waste of financial resources. 2 days, a 2-day truck show was perfect. But you live and learn. That was
Yeah.
our second show. And this year's truck show, we cut it back from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We cut it back to Friday and Saturday. And last year's truck show, I was sick as a dog. I was hurting because, you know, I was still trying to recover from what they had done to me at the hospital in New Orleans. And I was slowly recovering, and I struggled for 3 days. It was a battle, but we pulled it off. We made some mistakes, but it was our second year, and we learned. This year, we learned from what the mistakes that we made last year, and we're
Sure.
going to improve upon those mistakes. You know, we're not going to have mistakes this year. We just had a truck show board meeting today, and the whole board meeting was. I spoke about the mistakes that we made last year and how we are going to overcome those mistakes. That way we don't go backwards, we continue to move forward in a positive direction. And all I got back, I have a fantastic board of directors. I had positive feedback, positive, they all had great ideas for this year. And this year is going to be a fantastic show. It's going to be a phenomenal show. I'm just amazed. Our first uh, our first truck show, we had 235 registered trucks, and we ended up with 135 that showed up, that actually showed up. And I
Hmm.
knew that. I knew I wasn't quite sure what the percentage of that was going to be, but I knew it was going to be fairly high because people, you know, when the getting's good, you got to work that truck because the cost to do business in trucking is outrageous. So,
Yeah.
you know, I understood why we only had 135. And last year, I think we registered last year 185, and we had like 115 show up last year. And that was mainly in part to the economy. The price of diesel was through the roof. The insurance industry in the state of Louisiana is just, the state of Louisiana makes it so hard if you own a trucking company or if you're owner operator. The state of Louisiana makes it so difficult to be able to make ends meet for your company, to make the bills, to pay your employees. And it's just really tough. Everybody's having a tough time in the trucking industry in our state because, and the major factor behind that, our state does not, the way they write the legislation, they say we have open markets, but they make it so expensive for these out of state insurance companies to come in to be able to do business in our state.
Mm.
So we have a handful of insurance companies that from the state of Louisiana that actually write policies, and it just makes it so difficult because of the price of maintaining insurance on your vehicles. But I lost my train of thought. Where we were, I forgot where I was going.
You were talking about the numbers from last year,
Oh
and
yeah,
so how's it going
and
this year?
this year, we're on track the same as last year.
Okay.
Um, the sponsors we had on our first year, I think we had 5 or 6 decent sponsors. Last year, I want to say we had 30 major sponsors last year. Um, One of our major sponsors last year was Roadworks. I don't know, are you familiar with Roadworks?
No, I'm not.
Roadworks, they're truck accessory manufacturer. They
Okay.
manufacture chrome parts. But Roadworks was here. We had you heard of OOIDA, Owner Operators
Yep,
Independent
for sure.
Drivers?
I'm a member. Yep.
Well, about 2 weeks before the truck show last year, I get a phone call from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm like, "Who's this?" So I answered the phone, and the gentleman told me he was with OOIDA organization, and he said, "We would like to come to y'all truck show." I said, "You sure you got the right number, man?" And he said, "Barry," he said, "we're hearing nothing but good things about your truck show, and we want to be a part of it this year." I said, "Well, y'all come on." And, I told them the different sponsorship levels, and they ended up getting one of the levels. And I just couldn't believe it. They actually they bought their 53-foot trailer last year,
Yeah.
which is basically like a radio station, and they
Yeah.
broadcasted live from the truck show last year. And I was just I was amazed. I couldn't believe that we had pulled that off. And this year, one of our major sponsors this year is Bennett Family of Companies.
Okay.
That blew my mind. Miss Trotter with Bennett, she called me up. Well, she sent me an email with a phone number and told me to call her. So I called her, and she said, "Barry, I want to thank you." I said, "Thank me for what?" And she said, "Last year, your truck show fell the same date as our truck show." I said, "I know." I said, "I apologize." I said, "I'm so sorry. I felt horrible, but I didn't, think any." I said the possibilities of somebody having a truck show the same date as mine, I didn't think it was, possible. And
Right.
lo and behold, Star Stripes and White Lines in Atlanta, Georgia, it was the same date as ours.
Yeah.
So this year, I moved ours a week before theirs. And I did that intentionally. I didn't want, it's all about supporting the other truck shows on the truck show circuit. So
Yep.
I'm like, I got to move our truck show back or ahead. So I moved it back, and she got in touch with me to thank me for doing that. And she told me, she said, "For doing that, we're going to be signing up as a sponsor for y'all this
That's
year."
great.
So I can't remember Miss Trotter's first name. I got to use word association with everybody's name. But as far as the sponsors this year, it's last year the sponsors were signing up left and right, and this year it's really slow, and it's because of the state of the economy.
Yeah.
I don't have any worries. We are having a truck show. The truck show is not going anywhere. Um, we're going to be. I told the board that the next two to 3 weeks we're going to be popping in person, um, trying to sell sponsorships to the major companies. Um, I don't have any doubt. I think that all the sponsors that we had last year, and we probably had 30, between 30 and 40 big sponsors. They're going to sign up at the last minute. It's just the state of the state that the transportation industry is in right now. It's just a cost. Everybody's
Yeah.
kind of pinching pennies right now.
Yeah, it's tough, and every time you think it might get a little better, it seems to get a little bit worse. So at some point we'll get
Yeah,
to the bottom and get headed back in the right direction here. But
yeah, that would be nice.
so what's your favorite part about your truck show?
My favorite part every year when I open up the truck show, this is our third year, but every year I look forward to getting on stage and opening up the truck show. Um, we have different speakers to open up. Everybody speaks for 10, 15 minutes. And my favorite part is welcoming all the truck drivers that came from across the country. We had a truck driver that from Ontario, Canada, Mr. Clem. He came from Ontario, Canada. He found a load in our area just to come to our truck show, and he showed up to the truck show with a load. So that was awesome. But my favorite part is whenever I grab the microphone and I call everybody up to the front where the stage is, and I welcome everyone, and I tell all of our participants, I make sure that they all know that this is not my truck show. It's not the board of directors truck show. I tell them every year that that the truck show is for them. It's their truck show. The only involvement that we have, we put the pieces together that they give us to put on this truck show. And we're in my travels throughout the year, after like last year's truck show, um, I meet with different truck drivers. I just bump into different truck drivers here and there. And when we talk about the truck show, they always start the conversation. They say, "Hey, Barry, our truck show is going to be great this year." Hey, Barry, they use the word and I
Nice.
love that because they understand it's not my truck show, it's their truck show. And that's the biggest thing. I'm getting goosebumps talking about that. And my biggest thing on our first year and second year, the reason for this truck show is, yeah, we want to help our benefactors, but the main reason is to pull the trucking community, not only in our state, but throughout the country, to pull everyone together to support everyone.
Yeah.
Because in the tough times that we have, everybody's going, having a tough times, financially, keeping the doors open, keeping the wheels turning. We need to support one another. You know, we need to be there. We need sometimes, people need fresh ideas. You know, what are you doing with your company? You know, how are you making it? And that's
Yep.
what our truck show is all about. Supporting everybody. And
Yeah.
it's our first truck show. Another big thing that we don't do, and we never will do, we don't allow alcohol. We'll never allow alcohol. I don't think it's the right venue for alcohol. Uh, Something else that we do, and that will never change, we we have a free event. It's free to the public. We don't charge for parking. We don't charge to get in. The only thing that, if somebody comes to our truck show, the only thing that they pay for is for food and drinks. Our primary revenue source before the truck show is sponsorships, but it's not really a revenue source until you meet the cost of what it takes to put on that truck show.
Sure.
Um, And at the truck show on the grounds, our only revenue source is food and drink sales. And we have an auction. We auction off different items. Last year, our auction, I think we had like 30 items for auction, and we turned 12,500 in auction items. And I think we did 12,500, somewhere around there, in food and drink sales, just barbecue hamburgers and drinks. And we sold a mess load of, and all the guys from the weight training center, those were the guys that ran the food and drink section. Those were the
That's great.
guys that helped us set up. They all worked on site, and I can't thank each and every one of those guys for helping out with that truck show the first year and the second year. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a great group of guys.
Well, and I hadn't been to any truck shows in quite a while until this year when I started going again. And what there's a tremendous energy at the truck shows, right? And yeah, times have changed. It's a different job. It's a different industry than it was when you and I started. And then before that, it's even more different than the years before that. But there's when you get together at a truck show and you see kids and you see families and you see like the reasons why we do this thing, trucking, it's yeah, it does. It brings you goosebumps. It brings a tear, lump in your throat. A lot of those things that you know, you don't you're not reminded of every day.
Right.
The other cool thing about truck shows, now that I'm making the rounds more and seeing more of them and different ones, is the regional flair, right? The differences, and there's trucks that you won't see anywhere else than at this truck show because a lot of these trucks that it's not like you're going to drive 2,000 miles to bring these to the truck show. So there's you're going to see models and remodel jobs, makes of trucks and years of trucks that you're not going to see anywhere else in the country.
And Tony, I'm glad you said that. Not only, one of our things that we do, we support the truck driver, across the country. But one of the other things that our organization does, we support other truck shows, other regional truck shows, national truck shows, smaller truck shows in our area. We go out, we publicize for them. We do a little bit of advertising for them through Facebook. And we actually show up. We show up on site and we go visit with the organizers. We visit with every truck show that we go, like the Kimball family, Fred Kimball. They own Kimball Trucking in Port Allen, Louisiana. They put on a nice truck show every year, and we went out there and we supported them this year. And we seen a bunch of our trucks from our previous truck show that were over there supporting. Another good show that we actually go to is the Gulf Coast Big Rig Truck Show. That was actually last weekend. I
Right.
went and I was a part of that, and it was just a phenomenal truck show. Another good truck show is one that Troy Massey puts on, Old Town Rig down in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Hmm.
That is a phenomenal truck show. It's just the the level and commitment that the owner operators put into the trucks, and not only blood, sweat, and tears, the amount of money that they put into these trucks is just astounding. Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi have some of the most beautiful show trucks. They just take pride. I'm not saying everybody doesn't take pride, uh,
Yeah,
but it's just that level of pride that, down here in Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, they put into their vehicles, their trucks. It's just
for sure.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, Barry. I'm so happy that we got a chance to talk and do an interview together. I'm really looking forward to coming to the show in October. And that's the 24th and 25th of October, right?
Yes, sir. And what I was thinking about after the board meeting today, I was driving back and I'm like, okay, I said, I need to do something for Tony. I'm honored. I'm honored that you picked, our organization to interview. I think that's awesome. Um, but what I'm wanting to do for you, if you come out to our truck show, I'm going to give you a spot with electricity. You could do your podcast live from the event on the 24th and 25th. I'll give you a spot, a table, chairs, a tent, whatever you need.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing, Barry. Thank you. Thank you for that. And let me convince my wife that this is a 2-day trip with and uh
You,
and we'll go from
Tony,
there.
you won't regret it. We have a phenomenal lineup of events. We actually last year, when I was thinking about, every year you got to do bigger and better.
Of
And
course.
last year we topped the first year. We did the convoy last year that turned out great. And I'm like, what can I do this year that's gonna top last year? And I was like, I'm gonna get the biggest projection screen uh, that I could find out there. The biggest one they sell. And long story short, I ended up finding a 22-foot tall projection screen, inflatable screen. And
Yeah.
Friday night we're gonna have a Friday night movie for the kids to come out.
Nice.
We're gonna serve free popcorn, free drinks, and we're gonna play Smoking the Bandit on the big screen that night. That's gonna be a lot of fun.
And then on
And what
Saturday we're gonna watch some Alabama football or something like that, or
I don't think we're gonna be watching football. We literally our first year. If you go back in our pictures and look at we had Angelo Felipe with Beverly Companies. He's a heavy haul company out of across the river from New Orleans, and he did some drone footage that was phenomenal
oh, cool.
on our first year. And all that drone footage that he did, we use it in our marketing materials last year and this year.
Yeah.
But when I look back at those pictures from the first year, in that one day, we had between 5 and 7,000 people come out. The entire parking for the facility from the drone footage there was no place to park. This parking was, and I'm talking general public.
Hmm.
It just blows my mind that we had that much support from the community that came out to support the truck drivers. And last year we had about the same in attendance as far as general admission. And this year we have a phenomenal band. He's known throughout the country. His name is Jamie Bergeron and the Kicking Cajuns. They play Cajun music, Zydeco music, a little bit of everything, and they're just phenomenal. They put on a heck of a show. But he's going to be playing Saturday afternoon
Okay.
at the truck show this year, and he puts on a heck of a show. It's going to be a good time.
Nice. Well, that's great. Yeah, we'll get some links spread up on the social media pages with Barry's page and the website. And, just for people, I know there's a bunch of business owners who listen to the podcast. And, the one thing I know a bunch of people go to some of the bigger shows, right? The Mats and, the Florida Truck Show and the Texas Truck Show down in Houston. And, but there's an incredible power in these regional truck shows and the connections that you can make. Guys like Barry, the organizers, I mean, they're well connected, and there's opportunities to meet your potential clients by getting involved in these regional truck shows. So it's definitely something for everybody listening to consider. Reach out to Barry, and if you're interested in a sponsorship and help raise some money for a great cause.
That's awesome. I thank you for that, Tony.
All right, thanks, Barry. You have a great night. Good talking to you. We'll talk again soon.
You too. Talk to you soon. Thank you, Tony.
We're talking trucking life, uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories, and the miles in between. From first jobs to last hauls, the laughs that kept us going, and the lessons that left a mark.
Welcome back, everybody. That's going to just about do it for this ride this week. From breaking down the freight math to dodging rogue AI rigs and all the way down to Rain, Louisiana and back, we've covered business, the culture, and the community that keeps this industry rolling. Big thanks to Barry Trahan for jumping on the show and reminding us that some of the best things in trucking still come down to grit, good people, and getting together face to face. Quick reminder to pay visit to our friends on the show on social media. Of course, check out Barry's website and Facebook pages, LouisianaTruckShows.com. I'll post his links out on the socials, on the website, on the podcast episode. Check out Big Cal over at Trucking with Coffee and Cal. He had a big week running last week. That boy, Cal, you racked up some miles, buddy. And then he's taking a couple days off. So hope you're enjoying your weekend off and get back out on the road here this coming week. Of course, I-95 Truckers, Al, and all his great photographs over there. Chris Barber. And check out the Truck Business Network on Facebook. That Facebook group, I'll post that link out so you can go check that out and get connected with people who care about this business and have a ton of wealth and knowledge to share with everybody. Coming up on the podcast, the guests continue. I've got a whole stack of them coming our way, so look forward to that. Hoping to round up a couple folks to talk about the driver shortage, air quotes, driver shortage. I've been reading Will Cook's book on that topic. Of course, it's been in the headlines here lately. You see the good old folks at some of these trucking organizations down in Washington pushing their agenda. And I know Danger Dave has an opinion or three on this topic. Maybe we'll be able to pull off a roundtable or something this week and talk driver shortage. Also, I plan to hit the road to some truck shows coming up. Of course, summer show season is in full swing, with events going on somewhere pretty much every weekend this time of year. Check out the website, thetruckshowlist.com. I plan on hitting Old Town Rigdown in Nacogdoches, Texas. I think I said that right. I can't spell it either, so hopefully at least I can say it. And of course, Barry's show down in Louisiana in October. Coincidentally, there's also a truck show in Arkansas that weekend, American Truckers Jubilee in Searcy, Arkansas. So if you can't make it down to Amos Moses country, head on over to Arkansas and check out Lee Owen's show. I'll get him on the podcast here soon as well. Of course, Stars and Stripes and White Lines going on in November over in Atlanta. That's kind of the big culmination of truck shows for the season. And lots of other great shows going on the rest of the summer here and into the fall. So check those out on the truckshowlist.com website. Be sure to keep reaching out. If you'd like to be on the show, like, follow, comment, subscribe, leave us a review, email us at inbox@channel19experience.com. There's also a contact form on the website. Keep sharing the podcast with your friends. Thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next week. We've got work to do.
This has been the Channel 19 Experience. If it's about trucking, we're talking about it. All uncut. The wild stuff, the weird stuff, the mistakes, the memories. But we talk about the world of trucking today, too. Everything from legislation to lane changes in the industry. We got it covered. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back at the ranch soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on social media at Channel 19 Experience and the website at www.channel19experience.com. That's channel and the numbers 19. See you down the road.